I still remember the first time I went to pick up my mom from her job. She worked as a housekeeper for a woman who lived in an enormous, imposing house. As I walked in, the sheer size of the place made me feel small and uneasy. There was something off about it, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The silence inside the house was unnerving. It wasn't the kind of peaceful quiet you'd expect in a home this grand. It felt oppressive, almost like the house itself was listening. The shadows seemed to stretch further than they should, and the long corridors seemed endless, as if the walls were shifting when I wasn't looking. My mom greeted me briefly, asking me to wait in the living room while she finished her tasks. I sat on the sofa, trying to distract myself by looking around, but my gaze kept drifting to the hallway in front of me. There was something about the way it seemed to disappear into darkness that left me uneasy, as if something or someone was watching me from its depths. I tried to shake off the feeling, convincing myself it was just my imagination. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop glancing at the end of the corridor, where a partially open door led to one of the rooms. Something about it felt wrong. As I sat there on the sofa, my eyes kept drifting toward the hallway in front of me. At first, it was just curiosity, but then I noticed something or someone standing in the doorway of one of the rooms at the end of the corridor. I froze, squinting to get a better look. At first glance, I assumed it was the husband of my mom's boss. The figure was tall, and I thought maybe he had stepped out of the room for a moment. But as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I realized I was wrong, very wrong. What I was looking at wasn't human. The figure was unnaturally thin, almost skeletal. I could see its ribs jutting out from its chest as if its skin were barely clinging to its body. Its skin was a sickly mix of black and grey, like ash smeared over decayed flesh. The face, I can't even fully describe it. Its mouth seemed to sink inward, as though it didn't have a proper jaw, and its eyes large, bright, and reflective locked onto me with an intensity that made my blood run cold. It didn't move, it just stood there, staring at me. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like I was trapped in that moment. My hands gripped the edge of the sofa, but I couldn't bring myself to look away. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen, but it felt like an eternity. I couldn't move, my body felt like it was cemented to the sofa, every muscle stiff and unresponsive. I tried to look away, to break the trance I was in, but my eyes were locked on the figure. It felt like my mind was screaming for me to run, to escape, but my body refused to obey. The creature remained still for what seemed like an eternity, its glowing eyes never leaving mine. Then, slowly it began to turn. The motion wasn't jerky or abrupt, but deliberate, as though it was savoring the moment. It kept its gaze fixed on me, unblinking, as it turned away and stepped into the room. The air in the house grew thick, almost suffocating. It was as if the very space around me had become heavier, pressing down on my chest. Time felt wrong, distorted, every second stretched out, and the weight of the silence was unbearable. My heart raced, but I couldn't move, couldn't even think clearly. I just sat there, staring at the doorway where the creature had vanished. Finally, after what felt like an age, I heard footsteps behind me. My mom had finished her work and came into the room. The oppressive feeling in the house didn't lift, but at least I wasn't alone anymore. As soon as my mom walked into the room, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I asked her, my voice shaky, "Mom, did you see that thing, the creature in the hallway?" Her expression shifted instantly. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, but it was gone before I could catch it. Without missing a beat, she said, "What did you see, son? Let's just go, okay?" Her tone was calm, almost too calm, but I could tell there was something she wasn't telling me. We quickly left the house, and once we were in the car, I couldn't hold back my questions any longer. "Mom, what's going on with that house? Why was it so off?" She sighed, her grip tightening on the steering wheel. After a long pause, she finally spoke, her voice low. "That house is haunted, son. Everyone who works there knows it. I've seen things I can't explain, and I'm not the only one." I stared at her, stunned, but you never said anything. My mind raced with all the strange things I'd felt that day. She gave me a sad smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. If you acknowledge it, it becomes real, she explained, her voice trembling slightly. We've all seen things, but we just ignore them. We pretend we don't see them. The way I see it, the less attention you give to these things, the safer you are. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had thought I was imagining things, but my mom had been living with these horrors all along. And I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it was that had watched me in that hallway, it wasn't going to let me forget it. Even now, I can't forget what I saw that day. The image of that creature is burned into my mind, and I feel chills run down my spine every time I think about it. It's like it's always lurking just beyond my thoughts, waiting for the right moment to resurface. I've tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, but deep down, I know what I saw. The horror of it doesn't fade, it only grows more vivid with time. I've avoided that part of town ever since, keeping a wide berth from my mother's boss's house. Whenever I pass by, I can't shake the feeling that something is watching me from the shadows, following me, just like it followed me out of that place. I don't know if it's my mind playing tricks, but the unease never quite goes away. I can't help but wonder if whatever I saw that day didn't just stay behind in that house. Sometimes, when I lie awake at night, I ask myself if my mother was right, if pretending it doesn't exist is the only way to protect myself from the terror. Would it be safer to ignore it, to push it away and pretend it's all in my head? Or is that just a way of denying the inevitable, of pretending that some things aren't meant to be understood or confronted? I'll never know the answer. But every time I close my eyes, I wonder if that creature, whatever it was, is still out there waiting for me. Every time I walk through the streets at night, something strange happens. It doesn't matter if I'm alone or with someone else. It's as if the night itself turns against me. The most unsettling part is how the streetlights always seem to flicker or turn off entirely as I pass beneath them. At first, I thought it was just coincidence, but this happens every single time, without fail. It doesn't stop there. The air feels heavier, like the world is pressing in on me. I sometimes hear faint whispers or feel a chill run through me, though no one is around. The lights flicker and the wind picks up for no reason, as if something is trying to make its presence known. I can't explain it, and I don't understand why it happens to me. What makes it worse is that it has affected my life more than I care to admit. People start to distance themselves, avoiding night walks with me. I've tried to talk to others about it, but no one seems to experience the same things. It's like I'm cursed or something, and the strangest part is, I don't even know why. One night, I decided to take a walk with a friend, hoping that maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be as strange as it usually is. We were talking about random things, just enjoying the evening, when it started. The streetlights flickered and went out, one by one, just like it always happens. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe it was just a coincidence. But then, a gust of wind picked up, out of nowhere, and it felt like the temperature dropped suddenly. I could see my friend getting nervous. He looked around, clearly unsettled by the darkness that was swallowing us. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. I told him that this always happens to me, that it was just another one of those strange occurrences I couldn't explain. But that didn't seem to reassure him. If anything, it only made him more anxious. By this point, he was visibly uncomfortable, his eyes darting around like he was expecting something to jump out of the shadows. "This doesn't feel right," he said, his voice low. I could tell he was starting to believe there was something wrong with the situation, just like I had felt all these years. I wasn't the only one feeling this unease anymore, and it made everything feel even more real. I finally told my friend what I had been holding in for so long. "This happens to me every time I walk at night," I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. "The lights go out, the wind picks up, and it feels like something's following me. I've just gotten used to it, but I've never been able to figure out why. It felt strange to admit it aloud, especially after all these years of silently enduring it. But there was more, there are other things, too," I continued, trying to explain the full extent of the oddities I'd experienced. "Sometimes I hear voices calling my name, but I never know if they're real or just my mind playing tricks on me. It's like they're coming from nowhere, and every time I turn around, there's no one there. I paused for a moment, letting the words sink in, not sure if I was scaring him more than comforting him. As I spoke, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. It wasn't just physical, it was like the weight of all those nights spent walking alone, feeling like something was lurking just beyond my sight, had finally caught up with me. I was tired of trying to figure it out, tired of the fear and confusion, but more than anything, I felt helpless. This was a part of me, something I couldn't escape or control, no matter how much I tried, and every night, I had to face it again. After I shared everything with my friend, I could see the fear in his eyes. His face had gone pale, and he took a step back as if distancing himself from the very words I had spoken. I can't do this, he muttered, his voice shaky. I can't walk with you at night anymore. He didn't say anything else, just turned and walked away, leaving me standing there in the dim light, feeling a cold emptiness settle over me. As the days passed, I began to notice a pattern. People started avoiding me, not just my friend but others too. They'd make excuses or find reasons to not be around when I suggested a walk. It was subtle at first, small glances, brief pauses in conversation, but it grew harder to ignore. It felt like the more I opened up, the more I pushed people away, like something about me was wrong. This distancing from others began to weigh heavily on me. It wasn't just about being alone, it was the overwhelming sense of being different, of something being inherently off about me. I couldn't help but feel like the things that happened to me at night were somehow tied to me, like I was cursed or marked by something supernatural. But why? Why me? I had no answers, just more questions, and the fear that maybe I was losing touch with reality altogether. Each time I walked alone at night, I felt the weight of my isolation more acutely. The streets were no longer just quiet, they were oppressive. The cold wind, the flickering lights, the whispers, everything seemed to mock me, reminding me that I was stuck in this strange, unexplainable cycle, unable to break free. And as much as I tried to tell myself it was all in my head, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me, something I couldn't outrun. I can't help but wonder if what happens to me is some sort of supernatural phenomenon, or if there's a rational explanation behind it all. Maybe it's just my mind playing tricks on me, or maybe there's something out there, something I can't see, but still affects me in ways I can't understand. The more I think about it, the less certain I am of anything. It's as if the lines between reality and the unknown are starting to blur, and I'm left caught somewhere in between. I also can't help but ask myself if I'm the only one experiencing this, or if there are others out there who have gone through the same thing, but never dared to speak up. It feels like I'm the only one who's ever had the courage to admit what's happening, but I can't shake the thought that there must be others. Maybe they've felt the same chills, heard the same whispers, but stayed silent for fear of being thought insane. In the end, I'm left with no answers, only questions. The more I try to find an explanation, the more I realize that I might never know the truth. Is this just me, or is there something, or someone out there following me, waiting for the right moment? I can't say for sure. But every night, as I step outside and feel the cold wind and hear the whispers, I know one thing: something is out there. And it's been watching me, perhaps for longer than I realize. The unsettling feeling stays with me, a constant reminder that whatever this is, it's not just a figment of my imagination. There's a presence, something far darker than I could ever have imagined. And as I continue my walks at night, I'm left to wonder, what if this is just the beginning? What if it's only a matter of time before the true horror reveals itself?